Live NFL trivia every Tuesday night on Twitch at 9 p.m. Eastern. Come show off your football knowledge and have a chance to win cash prizes. Check the link in the description to find out more. And now, on with our feature presentation. In the first round of the NFL draft, the guys that typically get drafted are from FBS schools, mainly the Power 5. On paper, this shouldn't be too surprising. That's the highest level of competition at the collegiate level. That's the level that's getting the most attention and coverage in scouting reports. And those are the players that everyone is familiar with. Very rarely will you see a player from an FCS school get drafted in the first round. Now, it's very likely going to happen this year with North Dakota State quarterback Trey Lance, but since 2009, only 2 other FCS players have done this, and since 2001, only 4 have. And forget about Division II and Division III players getting chosen in the first round. Only under extreme circumstances would someone like that even be considered, which is what makes this story all the more crazy. Because in 1991, the Phoenix Cardinals did something absolutely insane that I can confidently say we will never see again. They took a guy that didn't play college football and instead was playing in a semi-pro league. Imagine taking a guy in the first round and with a top 10 pick no less, that was playing in a random summer league in the Northeast that no one had ever heard of. And imagine that pick, somehow and against all odds and conventional wisdom, actually being one of the best first round picks in franchise history. In 1991, the Cardinals did this with defensive tackle Eric Swann. And this is the story behind that. There's 3 important things we have to ask ourselves here. Number 1, why did Swann not play college football? Why did he choose the semi-pro route, which is practically unheard of? Number 2, why did the Cardinals draft him? Why did the Cards take a guy playing in a glorified beer league across the country? And number 3, how did his NFL career turn out? Was Swann a good pickup by the Cardinals and worth the risk? Well, let's start with the first one. Swann was a very talented football player coming out of high school. He was born in North Carolina, went to high school in North Carolina, and was projected to play Division I football in North Carolina, as he signed a letter of intent to play for NC State. He was so coveted, in fact, that Swann had 99 scholarship offers. The 6'4", 300-pound lineman essentially had his pick of where he wanted to play. The only problem? He couldn't get in. Swann needed to get a 700 on the SAT out of a possible 1600. On the first try, he didn't get it. So he took it again. He didn't get it. He kept repeating the process 8 times, and all 8 times, he failed to get 700. The highest score he got was 670. It should be noted that Swann had attention deficit disorder, making standardized testing like this hard for him. After 8 tries, he had a few options. One was to join the Marines. Another was to go to NC State, but sit out the season as an academic redshirt. However, Swann didn't want to do that. As he said, "I didn't want to be labeled as a Proposition 48. I felt that if you're labeled as a Proposition 48, you are being labeled as not smart or academically ineligible. I didn't want that label." The other option was intriguing. That option was minor league football. While Swann was working out at NC State, he had a maintenance job at the North Carolina State Fairgrounds. There, by complete chance, he got in touch with Dick Bell, the general manager of a team from Massachusetts known as the Bay State Titans. Bell convinced Swann to leave North Carolina and come to Massachusetts to play for his team, despite the fact that Swann would be making a grand total of $0. The league was a complete disaster. The minor league football system had 2 teams fold in the middle of the season, and the league itself folded after 1 year. The season got shorted prematurely due to budget issues. At one point, the Titans players went on strike, forcing the team to field a bunch of replacement players that wound up losing 67-0. But Swann was a star. He was the best defensive lineman in the league, recording 72 tackles, 11 sacks, and 4 blocked field goals in 10 games. Next stop for him? The NFL. Alright, I know what you're probably thinking. There is a giant leap between this rinky-dink minor league and the NFL. So how on earth did Swann even get discovered by pro scouts? Well, after the season ended, Dick Bell sent game tape of Swann to every team in the league. It should be noted that Bell also served as Swann's agent, though that relationship would fracture once Swann got into the NFL, as Bell employed some really shady practices. And the league was impressed by Swann, so much so that they invited him to the NFL Combine. By this point, he was officially on the radar. And after he ran a 4.7 40, which is insane since he weighed over 300 pounds, he shot up draft boards. He worked with Mike Doyle to put together an unbelievable combine. And if that name might sound familiar, it's because a few years later, Doyle was the mastermind who made everyone high on Mike Mamula. Nobody really knew what to think of Swann. On one hand, he was physically gifted. He looked the part of a defensive lineman. He was clearly good in high school as he had 99 scholarship offers. On the other hand, he was playing against guys with day jobs and guys who would never even sniff the pros. He was doing this against guys you would find at your local YMCA. Where do you draft a guy like this? For the Phoenix Cardinals, the answer was simple. Yeah, let's draft him 6th overall. The Cards were looking for some defensive help as they finished in the bottom half of the league in sacks during the 1990 season, and ranked 26th out of 28 teams in rushing yards allowed, 24th in rushing touchdowns allowed, and 23rd in yards per carry allowed. They needed to bolster up a defense that was in the bottom 5, and was a big reason why the Cards were 5-11 and dead last in the NFC East. And the Cardinals were a team that basically threw all draft boards out the window. They routinely picked guys in the first round that were not expected to go in the first round. Anthony Bell and Kelly Stauffer immediately come to mind. When the Cards took Swann, there was immediate criticism and laughter, especially since Swann was just the second player ever to get drafted in the first round without playing college football. The only other one was Emil Sitko in 1946, and that was because of World War II, and he didn't even play in the NFL right away. Swann was blazing new ground, and a lot of people saw this pick as the same old Cardinals. You know, it's always a good sign when an article comes out the very next day with a headline saying that the team insisted that they didn't waste their draft pick. The Sun-Sentinel gave the pick a D draft grade. Multiple teams, including the defending champion New York Giants, called him raw and not ready just yet. That's not exactly something you want out of the 6th overall pick. So how did his career turn out? The Cards had a rough drafting history back then, but for once, they got it spot on. It didn't start off well for Swann, as he needed surgery just a few weeks after the draft, and was playing most of that 1991 season hurt. He also missed half of the 1993 season to repair some cartilage in his right knee. People were writing him off as a bust after those first couple of years. But once he put it together, and once he got things going and let his physical attributes take over, man did he put it together. He became so good, in fact, that eventual head coach Buddy Ryan called him the best defensive lineman he's ever seen. That is insanely high praise, especially when you consider that Ryan was the head coach of the Eagles when Reggie White was there. Obviously, Swann was not Reggie White, so Ryan jumped the gun just a little bit on that front. But Swann was dominant. He made it to the Pro Bowl in 1995 and 1996. He played 9 seasons in Arizona, finishing with 45.5 sacks, which is great for a defensive tackle. While he was never a first-team All-Pro by the Associated Press, in 1995, Sporting News gave him that distinction. Some even argue that in the mid-90s, he was the most dominant defensive tackle in the entire league. And perhaps no game exemplified this more than his 1993 clinic against Washington, where in a 36-6 demolition, he recorded 2 sacks and a safety, being named the NFC Defensive Player of the Week. Again, the Cards whiffed a lot on draft picks back then. There's a reason why they were consistently bad for so long, especially their first decade in the desert. But at least with Swann, they hit a home run. We are never going to see anything like this happen again. The idea that a player can bypass college football and be chosen with a top 10 selection in the first round seems ridiculous. And the idea that he can do it while playing in an unstable minor league where the competition was not good in the slightest bit is even more ridiculous. But 30 years ago, that's exactly what happened with Eric Swann. As his agent at the time, Dick Bell, noted, he was making $5 an hour. Now, he's a multimillionaire. And considering the circumstances, Eric Swann might have one of the greatest success stories in the history of the NFL draft. Be sure to like this video, ring the notification bell, subscribe down below if you haven't already, as it helps the channel out a lot, and be sure to check out Twitch every Tuesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern for your chance to play NFL trivia and win cash prizes. Link in the description below. If you want to see videos like this condensed down to 60 seconds, then follow me on TikTok at JRGator9 and subscribe to 60-Second NFL History on YouTube. Also, special thanks to all of our Patreon supporters who help with the channel. Your support is greatly appreciated. See how you can become a patron and request future video topics in the description below.